just see the adoption in our personal life through the use of platforms like ChatGPT, we also see the adoption even in businesses. There are quite a number of businesses that have started to see significant gains, right, from artificial intelligence. And we have two thought leaders here with us who will share, some of their experience and some of their thoughts as we go through. And so the first question which I would like to ask, and I would actually dedicate it to, I'll share it with both speakers, is how are businesses currently using AI to drive growth and innovation? And just to give some additional context, even though you both have extensive banking experience, your response doesn't have to be limited to that. It could be across everything you've seen, across your varied experiences. But how are organizations using AI to drive growth and innovation?
So AI is being used in many sectors today, in Nigeria and other parts of Africa. I think our conversation today is going to focus more on what we're playing in this context. If you look at banking as an example, from time immemorial, even before people get to know so much about AI, there have been many use cases on AI. So when you do a transaction as an example, and the transaction has what you call aberration, it's different from what you've always done. We have fraud models that are able to pick that the transaction is spurious and they can flag it as a deception. So we call it fraud model, fraud scoring engine. Another one I can readily think of is anti-money laundering solution, where people are bringing a lot of money into the system, and the money may not come from legitimate source, and the system as a result uses machine learning to determine if the money is coming from a legitimate source, and it flags it as a deception. One sector I'm very pertinent on is agri. So if you look at what people are doing in agri, most actually, you will go to Cairo in Egypt, where they do a lot of irrigation. You can use machine learning to determine when is it going to rain, and you can also use that to determine, to optimize your crop yields. So as an example, if you have a big farmland, and it will be very difficult for you to have humans to go across the farmland for mechanized farming. All you need is to use satellite images where you can see the texture of the crop, and you can tell the likelihood of those crops to have any disease, and that way you can address those diseases before spreading in the farmland. So I will leave it there and also allow my co-panelists to have it.
Thank you. So one beautiful thing about AI is that it has really gone from buzzwords, from PowerPoint presentation, from just talking about it to seeing it play. And just like Victor mentioned earlier, it's taking, for example, banking from being reactive to being proactive in a lot of smart decision making. And also because of the way transactions are scaling now, it is practically impossible for you to use the old method to support your customers. So we have things like customer experience agents that can autonomously handle customer query and pass resolution to other AI agents in the loop and solve a lot of problems for the customer. Then we also have things around logistics where you can track your parcel from wherever you initiate the transaction to where it's going to end without the need for any human intervention or any human in the loop. Another interesting one is that AI has also lowered the barrier of entry into some activities that we do. For example, in my bank, we have a strategy we call data at your fingertip. With data at your fingertip, we have AI models that will translate your natural language into queries, run it against the database, and come back with the insight that you need. Before now, that would require that you know how to write complex SQL queries before you can get the insight and the information you need from the database. But from the model we have that we call one prompt, you can just sit in front of your system and ask questions in plain English, and we're able to translate that to the complex queries and you get the result. So there are a lot of complications that AI has helped us solve when it comes to African businesses, and like I said, it has gone from us just throwing buzzwords around and jargons around to seeing the reality of the implementation of these tools.
All right, thank you very much. Very, very insightful. And just to touch on 2 things they said. So, Victor talked about AI in agriculture, and I find that very interesting, especially when we think about Nigeria and how a lot of times people have always said, experts have always said, agriculture is the next, biggest thing, given the land we have and the resources we have. And seeing how machine learning can actually unlock a lot is very, very important for us as a country. And I think it's also a use case that one wants to pay a lot of more attention to, given the potential. And then for Olawale, I think one very interesting use case he raised was the last one, which was around the data at your fingertips. And I think it's very interesting because it challenges a very, very long-standing notion, right, that we've always known, which is the fact that, you always need a data analyst, to be able to generate these numbers or these insights for you. What is happening now with AI is that just with, like we said, some simple queries, you are actually able to generate a lot of that. And I guess that's really interesting. And it's just interesting how our world is changing. And just looking forward to how a lot of more use cases will even unfold as we see more of this technology. All right, so let's just put our hands together for them one more time. Quite insightful. So the second question is, there's a lot of research that talks about how a lot of artificial intelligence projects fail. And this is not even just, this is globally, right? But when we even come to Africa, we have our own challenges, our own unique challenges. And I think, for me, the question is, what challenges have you seen so far in trying to implement AI solutions, right, as African businesses? And I guess it will also be to talk about, so for some of the challenges might not have fully solved, but it's also be to talk about what are some of the things you are doing, in order to try to solve some of these challenges. So any one of you can go ahead.
Okay, let me go. So I was somewhere yesterday, and coincidentally we were also talking about artificial intelligence. The truth is, the problems and challenges we face with AI, they are the usual challenges we would have faced with any other problem. There is nothing new that artificial intelligence is bringing on board. So if I'm going to say the 2 major things, the first one is around talent, and the second one is infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, there are policies around data protection that does not allow for example, a very highly regulated industry like banking to exchange data indiscriminately with those GPTs out there. So what that means is that ideally, you are supposed to have your GPU on-prem so that your data resides where you are and stuff like that. Although in my bank, we might be one of the first banks in Nigeria, we got delivery of our GPU like 2 weeks ago, and we started deploying the infrastructure because we have seen the advantages of artificial intelligence and going really high on it. So besides the cost of that infrastructure, which is actually nothing to most of the big organizations out there, the next one is talent. The problem with talent is also not peculiar to artificial intelligence. There have been instances where you want to write a Java or .NET code and you start looking for resources. So the same thing is applicable to AI, and a lot of people still see AI as relatively new, even though it's not. And talent is a very major problem in that regard. So what we've done to solve the talent issue is to organize training for people, and also see how we can repurpose some job function that AI is taking away to repurpose those people to be able to add to the talent pool. So for example, I mentioned customer experience, where we are getting to the stage where we are using AI models to reply emails and chats, to the last personalization, going to the core banking to get information and handing over to several AI agents to solve your problem. So that will actually free some resources, and we are repurposing those resources to be able to fit into the talent pool that is required. As for infrastructure, I think it's going to get better. There are quantized models that can run on less resources. I think before the advent of DeepSeek, you will be thinking about having the kind of infrastructure that the likes of Grok, Elon Musk, and OpenAI has. But with the way they've been able to tailor models like DeepSeek to use less resources, I think the future when it comes to infrastructure is also very bright. And I think they said recently, who are making something by going a step ahead of quantization by using a method called sync that can optimize a model and make it run 60% more efficient. So the challenges of infrastructure is getting resolved gradually, and I think we just need to be ahead of the curve as Africans. Thank you.
So over 60% of AI projects will fail, and they will continue to fail. The reason is because people create AI models not because of what consumers need, but because of their fantasies. So if you work very closely with data scientists, you know that they like to create a lot of flashy, bling-bling solutions. But the way to look at it is, AI should be used for real problems that can scale. So from the beginning, if you come up with a solution that will not scale, that is not needed, you can conclude that such a model is going to die on arrival. The second reason why projects fail, in addition to what we talked about, is literacy. In this part of the world, many people think AI is at the nascent stage and it's flashy and it cannot derive any tangible results yet. But that is wrong, because just earlier talked about how Sterling Bank has started using AI solutions. Where I work at Access Bank, we derive significant tangible results from AI. The truth is, if you not start using AI, the author will maybe left behind. So this is a level playing field. Everybody in this audience needs to start thinking of how to use every AI, how do you ensure that you bring the gap in marketing. The gap globally is quite enormous. Let me give you an example, speaking to why projects fail. In Nigeria today, to get a good data scientist that is really grounded, I'm not even looking for a senior data scientist, I'm looking for a junior data scientist. It's quite difficult to get that resource. In this year, I can tell you that I've done more than maybe 20, 30 interviews looking for local resource in the country to help us with data science. Because of the inability of organizations to get data scientists, projects get skill. Because we have very few people without knowledge. And that's the opportunity that people in this part of the world have. An opportunity to learn it, to be an expert in it, from the comfort of the house. And then they can help us to ensure that many of these projects that we're talking about do not fail at the end of the day.
Thank you very, very much. That was very insightful. So, Victor, back to you. There's actually another question I want to ask you, and it's really around, and it's just still riding on what you said. It's really around, so how do we balance investment in AI versus that short-term need for profitability that a lot of organizations are usually chasing? How do we balance both? Because at the end of the day, companies want to see the value and the money. So how do we balance that? Investing in AI versus that short-term value or profitability driving that.
That's a very tricky question, and I'll tell you why. When you go to board meetings, the board members, senior management, what they want to see is, where's the money? Where's the value? Have you monetized data? Have you monetized AI? We give you $1 million. How much value have you realized from the project? But what people need to start understanding is the fact that AI is a long-term play. However, in the process, you can extract tangible, small results. So, whatever project you want to embark on, my suggestion based on what I've tried to do time and again is, one, don't go big. Never start big. You test the waters. If you have a solution or you have an idea, come up with a prototype. The speaker earlier talked about prototyping. Prototyping is very important because if you do not prototype, you might fail. And when you fail one too many times, what happens is you might be discouraged. And you don't want to fail many times. Failure is a good thing in AI. I tell the team that we like to fail fast and fail forward. What that means is we start a project and we dedicate some resources to the project, and then we realize at some point that this is not going to work. Then we stop the project. We don't go further, we spend a lot of resources, spend more money on that project. We stop that project, we take the learnings while it failed, and then we move on to the next one. So to derive good benefits from resources, I think the first thing is don't buy huge infrastructure. You can start with open source. You can start with partnerships. One thing we're not doing very well in Africa is partnership and mentorship. So I was just talking to the head of operations for Windows Security, and he told me what we're doing. I told him what we're doing, what we're doing in access panel. And you realize that what you're trying to do, some people have done it, and they make some mistakes doing it. So all you need is learning from what you've done. And mentorship is also quite important. Thought leadership is quite important. I think one of the things that's been very well in this part of the world is learning from each other, having a forum like this where we all can come together and talk about how Africa as a continent and the position itself and derive significant value from artificial intelligence. But without that, the altar will continue to invest significantly, and at the end of the day, your investors will be frustrated, and you will also be frustrated, and you don't want to do that. So start small, take baby steps, and then you can go big back.
Thank you. So just to add to what Victor has said, I think just as it's related to any other project that you want to do, you need to tie your AI expected to pay for itself if properly tied to a business outcome. So, for example, if I want to justify spending money on AI models and infrastructure that will help me with fraud, if you look at what the banking industry lost through fraud last year, it is close to 12 to 13 billion. So few banks where fraud hit at some point towards late last year. So what I'm saying is that if I'm to bring artificial intelligence to solve this, I will tie it directly to the business outcome. And Victor mentioned something earlier that is very important. You don't just deploy AI just for the fun of it, just because you want to be funky about it. You have to ensure that you are meeting a particular need and you are tying it to justifiable business outcome. If possible, you need to tie it to revenue generation. And revenue can come in several forms, to the kind of experience you give your customer, to when you lose the customer, and what bringing a very straightforward process can bring into the system. I was somewhere, I think 2 weeks ago, and someone was giving instruction that if the money coming to my account is more than 500 million, make sure it doesn't stay in this particular bank. And I asked her, why did the organization make that decision? He said that the bank is just not efficient enough. So if you deploy artificial intelligence and you solve for that kind of efficiency, you will not know the kind of low-cost deposit that you have attracted to the organization, even without knowing. So in summary, I think what is very important is the investment should be commensurate to the revenue outcome. So if your business outcome is low, then you should ensure that the investment that you are doing is also low. You don't have to start by buying a GPU. You don't have to start by doing anything. You can just make use of 1 or 2 LLMs that are open source, that you can download via Olama or Hugging Face and places like that, and put something in place to use that justifies what you are trying to get as an outcome at the end. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Let's put our hands together again for them. So I'm going to ask 2 more questions, but it's going to take a slightly different direction. So 2 questions from... All right, so we'll take 2 questions from the audience. And it's really just going to be fastest fingers. So let me see hands. I can see 1, I can see 2, that's it. So please come forward, also come forward, and we'll just ask the question. Please, it must be AI related. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chukwemeka. My question is this. I worked on an AI knowledge management system and using the right architecture. At deployment, the considerations were around whether to get the hardware infrastructure vis-a-vis working with a cloud solution. You made mention of your organization just getting the hardware GPU. And one of the talks that came about when we were having the discussions around the infrastructure was the rate at which GPU are kind of getting obsolete, right? We have innovations making the current models going on really quickly. So how are you navigating that particular issue when it comes to architecture? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's a very interesting question. First, let me address the issue of something being obsolete, right? If your objective is to receive crispy clear form and snap pictures without necessarily standing in front of a mirror, the iPhone 12 is as awesome and as excellent as the iPhone 16 or 17 Pro Max till now. But if you want to follow the trend, then you might be under pressure to try and upgrade and upgrade and upgrade. So the second thing is the fact that now there is a slight difference between the way infrastructure goes out of way compared to this AI era. There is a lot of research that is being done to ensure that models use less and less and less resources. That's why I mentioned the other time of the research that Tuwawu was doing around SIM to ensure that you use 60% less of the resources than you required before. Before now, when we were deploying servers and those servers were going obsolete, it was because of the need to have more and more and more resources as we try to do something more powerful. But in case of artificial intelligence and the kind of research that is going on, your GPU or whatever you buy will be as relevant as it gets to whenever it comes. Then talking about the project that you're working on, like we mentioned earlier, you are going to size the business outcome with your investment. Now, the knowledge base you are trying to build, can it afford a 600 million naira kind of server and pay for itself? If the answer is no, then it is a wrong decision to start with trying to buy a GPU. So if I were to be in your shoes and I'm in an environment where there is a few hardware infrastructure, I can make use of whatever server I have like that by installing Ulama on that server. Then I will get some models that are low resource intensive models that I will deploy on that server and I'll still be able to do my run effectively. But when I get to the point where it's very obvious that I need to scale to the point of getting a GPU or whatever it is, then you will get it. Then also you need to ask yourself, the environment you play in, what are the regulators saying? You might not have that data protection restriction that made you decide that I need to have my GPU at my head office. So that when my regulators come and say the customer data that you're supposed to be protecting, how come you are sharing it with OpenAI or with Grok, I can take them to the server room and show them. If you don't have that kind of restriction, you have no business deploying a GPU locally. You can always rent a GPU abroad and subscribe to the service. And again, once your eye is on the ball, that what you are trying to achieve must be able to pay for whatever input you are investing into it, then it makes you make a better decision. Then again, let me re-emphasize on whatever GPU are now better they are every now and then. Trust me, if you wait for that, you are not going to make any decision. But just be rest assured that whatever GPU you deploy or infrastructure you deploy to be can be as relevant as it gets to whenever you want to practice it. Because basically you are supposed to have a model running on it. Your model needs resources, your model provides output, and that's exactly what your infrastructure is going to give you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question is directed to Mr. Victor. My name is Lawrence. I work with a financial company. I'm an IT officer and business intelligence analyst. You made mention of using AI for anti-money laundering processes where you could detect fraud and all. So I would like you to please share more light on it because it's a good recommendation that I think my business can also benefit from. And also one more question. You also mentioned that you've had about 20 interviews in order to select data science locally for the field. So I want to also ask that, what are you looking out for whenever you have such interviews? What soft skills or technical skills do you look out for? For some of us who tend to also pick up such skills. Thank you very much.
Very good question. So let me start with the area of use case. Today, everybody in the audience, you move money. So you send money from, let's say, your friend, from your account to your friend's account. If you run a business, if you're into SME, you move money, from your business account to another business. Now, when you move money from bank A to bank B, or you move money even in bank A, from account A to account B, every bank is cleaning, the transaction. We call it transaction monitoring, where we look at how money moves from one account to the other. It's a regulatory requirement, even for microfinance banks as well. Here's why. Because there's corruption everywhere in the world. The government wants to ensure that the money you're moving from one account to the other has a legitimate source. Now, for us to do that, it's humanly impossible for someone to just sit and go through those transactions one after the other. In Access Bank, as an example, we have about 12 million transactions on a daily basis. So you can imagine if I have to employ someone to go through 12 million transactions, it's humanly impossible to do that. Now, we come up with a model that's going to monitor those transactions and score them. We call it event scoring. So you look for anomaly detection where Victor moves money to Wale, day one, and he moves 500,000 there. Then day two, Victor moves another 5 million to Wale's account. Now, if Victor has only moved, let's say, 100,000 naira to Wale's account, or in time of Moria, that's fine. But the day I move something that is beyond the normal pattern, we call it aberration in science. So the solution swings into action to determine whether that transaction is legitimate or not. So there are many ways you can do that. So there's event scoring, there's transaction monitoring, there's anomaly detection. But at the end of the day, what it does is just to ensure that that money you're moving is legitimate. And in rare instances, if the bank suspects that the money is not legit, they can reach out to you, which we call CDD, customer due diligence. They call you, what's the source of this money? You have documents to support the source of the transaction. It's nothing, but it's a regulatory requirement. To answer your second question, I think this is a very important question, and it's a question I'm very passionate about. I've had the privilege of working in 18 countries in Africa. And one thing I've always relaxed is talent. There are enormous opportunities in Africa, huge opportunities. I know a lot of people in Japan, and recently people like us, we did University Japan. Why? Because there are so many opportunities in this country. But the problem is, we don't have the wherewithal to channel those opportunities. One area is artificial intelligence, data science. When I'm recruiting someone for data science role, the first thing I look for is a passion. Over and beyond, so let's say I want to recruit a junior data scientist. I look for a passion, I look for the zeal in you. I look for your willingness to want to learn. And the other thing I look for is your preparedness. So I ask people, do you go to the daily, do you know what this job is all about? Do you have what it takes to fit into this role? And many times you see people come for interview unprepared. So they don't even know what the role is all about. So you ask them, what is data science? You ask them, what is machine learning? Basic question, what is unsupervised machine learning? And they can't even answer. Then you ask them, tell me just one practical use case that you worked on. When I ask you that question, the expectation is just take me through the video. How you got the data, how you came up with this problem you're solving for, how you wrangle the data, you talk about data quality, then you talk about feature extraction. How did you get the features? What determines the most important features or attributes you're going to use for the model? And then you walk us through the entire process. If you are able to do that, trust me, without any doubt, you would have demonstrated that you will do very well on the campus. So preparation is quite important. And then, when we ask people, do you have any question for us? The first question they ask is salary. People don't ask, why are you looking for this role? What do you want me to do differently? You just need to demonstrate, to the interviewer that you're truly hungry, that you truly want to make a difference. When you do that, you will get a job. And for those who are looking for opportunities, I'm still recruiting. The matter of fact, we're looking for ELPs. If you go to our website, you see the vacancy there. We call it experience hires. We have between 1 and 5 years experience. Just go there, apply. It's a nice recruitment. So we have the opportunity of working in an infrastructure department, network department, data department. In data, we have data governance, we have data science and engineering, we have data visualization. So there are so many options. So if you think like the right person for the role, please go ahead and apply. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. Only hit me up on LinkedIn if you have something to share. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for our panelists. We finally got to the end of the panel session, and it's been quite an insightful one. Let's just put our hands together as end the panel session.